The 2024 NFL regular season has come to a close for the Las Vegas Raiders, and the results are disappointing. The team ended the season with a 4-13 record, following a tough loss to the Los Angeles Chargers at Allegiant Stadium. Despite winning 2 games back-to-back earlier, the Raiders were unable to finish strong, losing the final game 34-20. Their divisional record in the AFC West was a dismal 0-6, marking a low point for the franchise. To put this in perspective, the last time the Raiders went winless in the division was back in 2006, when they finished with a 2-4 record and secured the #1 overall pick. Back then, the team fired head coach Art Shell after just 1 season. This season's struggles raised serious questions about the future of head coach Antonio Pierce. After the game, Pierce faced reporters in a tense, brief post-game press conference. When asked about his future with the team, he responded with a simple, no comment, adding to the uncertainty surrounding the team's direction. The rumors of trades and potential changes only fuel the speculation, leaving fans and analysts alike wondering what comes next for the Raiders. When asked if he felt like he was working with a full deck of cards this season, Antonio Pierce responded by saying, "I was working with 53 guys. That's all I can say. Whatever 53 guys I get, I work with them." His answer reflected a straightforward, no excuses mentality, acknowledging the challenges but also emphasizing that no one feels sorry for you in the NFL. It was a clear message that, despite the tough circumstances, he wasn't making excuses. As for the team's future, when Pierce was asked if he thought the Raiders were far from being a competitive team, he mentioned that everyone could see the areas that needed improvement, but he didn't delve much further into specifics. The most telling moment came when he was asked if he felt he deserved another shot as head coach of the Raiders. His response? A brief, no comment, which added more uncertainty to the situation. The lack of clarity on his future only heightened the tension in the room. It was clear that Pierce was focused on the present, working with what he had, and didn't seem eager to speculate about his potential return. The season was difficult, with injuries and adversity piling up, but Pierce remained tight-lipped about what lay ahead for him and the team. In his response, Antonio Pierce seemed to indirectly hint that he wasn't dealt the best hand this season. Without saying it outright, his answer suggested that he wasn't given the best help, and it's hard to blame him for feeling that way. The season was full of misfortunes, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and the team was plagued by injuries. On top of that, the Raiders struggled with poor quarterback play for much of the year, and the offensive coordinator's performance was less than ideal. Despite the adversity, Pierce kept his focus on the reality of the situation, acknowledging that things just didn't fall into place. One of the more revealing moments came when Pierce was asked how close the team was to competing with a playoff-caliber squad, especially after facing the Los Angeles Chargers, a playoff team. His answer was telling. He said, "I think there's definitely everybody can see there's a glaring need on what you need." While he didn't specifically mention the quarterback position, it was hard to ignore that the glaring need he referred to likely pointed toward that very issue. His vague yet pointed answer suggested that the team's biggest obstacle, in his view, was at quarterback, even if he didn't directly say it. The lack of clarity was frustrating, but it highlighted the major area that needs to be addressed if the Raiders want to compete at a higher level moving forward. When Pierce mentioned a glaring need, it's hard to ignore that the quarterback situation is likely what he had in mind. In my view, that's the most pressing issue the Raiders face, and I'm sure many fans share that interpretation. What do you think? As the press conference came to an end, things took an awkward turn. Pierce was asked directly whether he thought he deserved to return as head coach for the next season. His response? A sharp, no comment. He didn't offer any explanation or further insight, and then, without saying much more, he quickly walked out of the room. The entire exchange lasted less than 2 minutes, and it was clear that Pierce wasn't interested in elaborating. His body language told a story of its own. He was moving around a lot, offering what seemed to be nervous, awkward smiles, and overall, his tension was palpable. It felt as if he was avoiding giving any direct answers, particularly when it came to his future with the team. Many people might have seen that moment as an opportunity for Pierce to make his case. He could have spoken about how he kept the team fighting through adversity despite the setbacks. Instead, he dismissed the question and left the room. It raised a lot of questions. Does Antonio Pierce know something we don't? Is he aware that his time as the Raiders' head coach is coming to an end? With Black Monday looming, Many are wondering if this is a sign of what's to come for Pierce and the Raiders. We could hear news about the Raiders' head coaching situation as soon as tomorrow. Personally, I hope we get clarity soon, whether they decide to keep Antonio Pierce or move on. The team has a lot of work to do in the offseason, and if they go in a new direction, the challenges will only increase. A new head coach means a new coaching staff and likely a new offensive coordinator as well. With Patrick Graham potentially leaving, there will be a lot of changes to navigate. The sooner the Raiders make their decision, the better, so they can begin focusing on the necessary improvements. Looking back at the game, I think it served as a harsh reality check for this team. While the previous 2 weeks saw us beating struggling teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars with a backup quarterback and the New Orleans Saints, it's clear that those victories weren't against top-tier competition. The Raiders' performance against the Chargers, a playoff-bound team, really showed the difference in quality and highlighted just how far the team still has to go. This game was the ultimate wake-up call for the Raiders, putting the state of the team into sharp focus. Heading into the game against the Los Angeles Chargers, the Raiders certainly had a lot to play for. There was motivation on the line, not just for the team, but for head coach Antonio Pierce as well. A win could have put the Raiders on a 3-game winning streak, which might have strengthened Pierce's case to remain as the head coach. Additionally, a victory over the Chargers could have made their road to the postseason much more challenging. Had the Raiders won, they would have forced the Chargers into a tougher matchup with the Baltimore Ravens on the road, rather than facing the Houston Texans. From a competitive standpoint, it seemed like the Raiders had an edge. However, once the game began, it quickly became clear that the Chargers were in control. The Raiders were outmatched in nearly every area of the game. The Chargers dominated possession, holding the ball for much longer and running more plays. It was a stark contrast in how both teams controlled the tempo, and it showed just how effective the Chargers were at establishing the run. The Raiders simply couldn't keep up, and the game quickly got away from them. The game against the Chargers was a harsh reality check for the Raiders, especially when you look at the offense's struggles compared to the defense's performance. The Chargers scored on 7 consecutive drives, dominating the game in every aspect. Justin Herbert was nearly perfect, completing 28 of 36 passes for 346 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. It was a commanding performance, and the Raiders simply couldn't keep up. For me, while some fans were excited about the Raiders' recent victories, I wasn't impressed by the wins against teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were struggling. Yes, it's always nice to win, but those wins didn't show me that the team was truly competitive. This game against a playoff team like the Chargers demonstrated the gap between where the Raiders are and where they need to be. They were outplayed in every phase, and it's clear that the team has a lot of work to do heading into 2025. As for the Raiders' draft position, the loss pushed them to the number 6 overall pick, which isn't terrible considering they were at number 8 last week. Had they won, they might have fallen to the 10th pick, which would have been disappointing. So, at least from a draft perspective, the Raiders have a solid position to potentially make an impactful selection. But even with the high pick, it's hard to overlook how much work is left to turn this team around after such a tough season. It's a bit disappointing that the Raiders won't have a shot at one of the top 3 picks in the draft. This season was tough in that sense, as the Raiders were part of a large group of bad teams, and there were just too many others in the same position. However, this does set the stage for what should be an interesting offseason. With the draft ahead, it'll be fascinating to see how the board shakes out. Right now, the Tennessee Titans hold the number 1 overall pick, and they're a team in serious need of a quarterback. There's a strong chance they could go for someone like Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. The Cleveland Browns are also a team to watch. Despite having Deshaun Watson, I think at some point they'll need to cut ties and recognize that he's not the future. I wouldn't be surprised if they take a quarterback as well. The New York Giants are another team in desperate need of a new quarterback. All of this means that in the top 5 picks alone, there could be 3 quarterbacks selected, which will have a ripple effect on the Raiders' strategy. With teams like New England and Jacksonville also looking to make moves, it'll be interesting to see how everything unfolds in the draft. I don't think teams like New England will target a quarterback, but Jacksonville could be an interesting case. With a potential new head coach, they might consider a quarterback change, but it's tough to predict their exact direction. For the Raiders, sitting at number 6 in the draft, it will be challenging to land one of the top quarterback prospects unless they move up in the rankings. It'll be interesting to see how things unfold, but we'll just have to wait and see. Another key factor in the Raiders' offseason will be the Tom Brady effect. As the new minority owner, Brady is expected to have significant influence on the team's football operations, especially when it comes to making decisions about the quarterback position. It's unclear just how much say he will have, though. Will he take a hands on role in the team's decisions, or will he leave that to others? The role of GM Dave Ziegler will also be something to watch. The offseason is shaping up to be a chaotic one, with a lot of important decisions on the horizon. In my opinion, the writing seems to be on the wall for Antonio Pierce. It looks like he's likely to be a one and done head coach for the Raiders. But what do you think, Raider Nation? Do you believe Pierce's time as head coach is over? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And for those of you new to the channel who enjoy Raider related content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. There's a lot of news coming soon, so stay tuned. With that said, I'll see you in the next video.